What if the guns everyone thought were finished, the ones pushed into history books or hidden away in safes, suddenly became the most sought-after firearms in America? Imagine revolvers once sold off as police trade-ins, now commanding $20,000 at auction. Picture rifles that languished on pawn shop racks for decades, suddenly disappearing from store shelves in less than 2 days. These aren't just tales of nostalgia. They're real stories happening right now, as forgotten legends roar back with modern craftsmanship and new respect. And the biggest shock of all is the firearm that everyone, even the industry itself, dismissed as overhyped excess. That pistol is now hotter than it has ever been. But before we get there, let's start with one of the oldest names to return to relevance. The Ithaca 37 Featherlight is proof that good design doesn't age, it just waits. When Marines carried this pump shotgun through the mud, sand, and salt water of the Pacific Theater during World War II, it earned a reputation for surviving where others failed. Its secret was the unusual bottom ejection system, a design choice that made it truly ambidextrous before that word ever became common. Left or right-handed, rain or shine, the 37 ran smooth. For years, it defined reliability, then quietly slid into decline as the original company collapsed in the 1980s. For 2 decades, the only way to find one worth owning was to dig through estate sales and gun shows, hoping for an early example before quality dipped. But when Ithaca was resurrected in the 2000s, something special happened. The new Featherlight models weren't cheap castings. They were machined from solid steel blocks. Action cycled smoother than ever, barrels pointed light and lively, and every flaw of the later production years was ironed out. The comeback wasn't about chasing gimmicks. It was about doing things right, honoring the soul of a shotgun that proved itself in war and in the woods. Today it costs more than a budget pump and doesn't offer endless aftermarket parts. But what you get instead is a shotgun that feels alive in your hands. A true classic built the way it always should have been. Some comebacks are less about style and more about history. The M1 Carbine may not carry the same mythical aura as the M1 Garand, but during World War II, it was the rifle more American soldiers carried than any other. Over 6 million were produced. It rode into Normandy strapped to paratroopers, crossed Pacific beaches in the hands of Marines, and gave GIs a weapon lighter than a Garand, but far more effective than a sidearm. For decades after the war, surplus flooded the civilian market, and the carbine became America's everyman rifle. Then slowly, they dried up. By the 2000s, decent military carbines were fetching thousands of dollars, and reproductions were inconsistent at best. Enter Auto Ordnance, a company that decided the carbine story wasn't over. Their modern reproduction captured the lightweight feel, the quick handling, and the short-stroke gas system that made the original so beloved. Walnut stocks, Parkerized finish, and just over 5 pounds of balance make it as pointable as it ever was. No, the little PhD carbine cartridge isn't a powerhouse compared to modern rifle rounds, and the 15-round magazines don't look impressive against today's standards. But that misses the point. The M1 Carbine isn't about raw ballistics. It's about history you can still shoulder. A rifle that connects today's shooter to the men who carried it into the most important battles of the 20th century. Holding one is holding a story, and that story is once again accessible. Where the carbine represents utility, the Walther PPK embodies style. This is the gentleman's pistol, first produced in 1931 and carried by detectives, officers, and, in the minds of millions, one tuxedo-wearing secret agent. Its steel frame and fixed barrel made it small, accurate, and reliable at a time when many pistols struggled to check all 3 boxes. For decades, it defined what a concealed carry pistol should be. But when Smith Wesson ended their licensing agreement in 2012, new PPKs vanished from American stores. For years, you either paid steep premiums for imports or settled for used examples, and demand far exceeded supply. That changed in 2019, when Walther began producing them in Arkansas. The American-made PPK is every bit the pistol people wanted. Classic steel construction, that famous slide-mounted decocker, a long, deliberate double-action first pull for safety, and a crisp single-action follow-up. Yes, it is heavier than polymer pocket pistols, holds only 7 rounds, and demands regular cleaning. But its comeback proves something deeper. Sometimes what people want isn't the newest, lightest option. Sometimes they want the proven reliability and timeless style of a pistol that has never gone out of fashion. Some guns come back because they simply refuse to be forgotten in the field. The Marlin 336 chambered-in .30-30 Winchester has been America's deer rifle since 1948, with millions of whitetails to its credit. Hunters loved it for its handy length, quick lever action, and the stopping power of a cartridge designed for woods ranges. But when Remington acquired Marlin in 2007, the quality collapsed. Receivers didn't fit, stocks rattled, actions jammed, and the 336 became a sad echo of itself. By 2020, many wrote the rifle off as dead. Ruger's acquisition of the brand changed everything. By 2022, the 336 was reborn with precision machining, cold hammer-forged barrels, and real walnut stocks. It shoots straighter, cycles smoother, and feels sturdier than it had in decades. Sure, it still holds only 6 rounds in a tube magazine, weighs more than some modern rifles, and requires different shooting techniques than a scoped bolt gun. But those who shoulder it know why it came back. It is the rifle of American hunting. Tradition, a reminder that some classics survive not because they're trendy, but because they work. Other returns speak directly to a generation that carried them every day. The Smith Wesson Model 19 Combat Magnum was the revolver of American law enforcement for nearly 4 decades, balancing power and portability in a way no other sidearm did. Built on the K-frame, it offered the authority of .357 Magnum without the unwieldy heft of bigger revolvers. It was accurate, it was durable, and it became part of the image of the American police officer. When Smith & Wesson discontinued it in 1999, it felt like the end of an era. Collectors paid premiums for clean examples, especially early pinned and recessed models. Then in 2019, the Model 19 returned. This time, it had modern metallurgy that fixed the timing issues of the old guns, a 2-piece barrel for better accuracy, and improved lockwork while keeping the smooth trigger and classic lines. It still only holds 6 rounds, still weighs more than today's polymer service pistols, and reloads slower than any magazine-fed weapon. But none of that matters to those who understand what it offers. The reliability of a wheel gun, the soul of an American classic, and a trigger press that teaches you everything about shooting well. If the Model 19 was a workhorse, the Browning High Power was a thoroughbred. John Browning's final design, refined in the 1920s, became the sidearm of armies around the world. Its 13-round magazine was revolutionary. Its slim profile made it comfortable, and its single-action trigger made it a shooter's pistol. From British commandos in World War II to modern special forces, it proved itself across continents. Yet in 2018, FN discontinued it, and it seemed the high power's time had ended. Then came the surprise. Springfield Armory launched the SA-35 in 2021, a faithful reproduction with smart improvements like eliminating the magazine disconnect, upgrading the trigger, and adding modern sights. FN followed with its own updated version, offering ambidextrous controls and higher capacity magazines. What's remarkable is how a design nearly a century old still feels current in the hand. It isn't a Glock, it isn't polymer, and it isn't loaded with safeties and modular parts. It's steel, it's slim, and it points like an extension of your body. The comeback proves that when something is designed right the first time, it never truly becomes obsolete. The Colt Python's return was less about function and more about myth. Introduced in 1955, the Python was the revolver that defined craftsmanship. Deep royal blue finishes gleamed like mirrors, and the triggers broke like snapping glass. Each was hand-fitted by skilled craftsmen, and for 50 years it reigned as the king of American wheel guns. When Colt discontinued it in 2005, values skyrocketed. Collectors turned them into safe queens, often too valuable to shoot. Then, in 2020, Colt stunned the firearms world by bringing it back. This time, it was stainless steel, CNC machined, and stronger than ever. It kept the ventilated rib barrel, the full underlug, the iconic look, but added modern strength and precision. It is still heavy, still expensive, and still carries the aura of a gun, more at home in a showcase than a holster. But anyone who fires the new Python knows it is not just nostalgia. It is an instrument of precision, a revolver that proves some legends return, not as shadows, but as stronger reflections of themselves. The Ruger 1022 never really vanished, but the classic wood-stocked version faded as Ruger focused on tactical editions. Generations grew up on the 1022 because it was cheap to shoot, endlessly customizable, and reliable as sunrise. When the classic walnut-stocked model returned in 2020, shooters were reminded of why it became America's rimfire rifle. The rotary magazine feeds smoothly, the 18-inch barrel shoots tighter groups than its price suggests, and the platform can be transformed into almost anything. Yes, the factory trigger could be better. The sights are dated, and the .22 cartridge isn't about power, but those criticisms miss what the 1022 does best. It trains fundamentals, introduces new shooters to accuracy, and creates a canvas for every kind of modification. Its comeback wasn't about reinventing, it was about reminding. Lever guns found another champion in Henry Repeating Arms. For years, they built rifles with tubular loading, great fit and finish, but without the side gates many shooters wanted. Then in 2019, Henry introduced their first side gate rifles, and suddenly, the company wasn't just a nostalgic brand, it was leading. Their big boy steel and long-ranger rifles combined traditional craftsmanship with modern convenience, precision machining, smooth actions, and caliber choices from .357 Magnum to .45-70 gave hunters and shooters exactly what they had been asking for. They are heavier than some competitors and cost more than budget rifles, but the payoff is quality you can feel in every cycle of the lever. At a time when Marlin and Winchester were struggling, Henry quietly became the benchmark, proving that American lever actions are not just alive, but thriving. And then there's the shocker. The gun that went from meme to masterpiece. The Desert Eagle was the pistol of excess in the 1980s, famous for its massive size and movie cameos. Chambered in cartridges usually reserved for rifles, it was more spectacle than tool. When production moved overseas, quality dropped, and the Eagle became a joke in serious circles. Then in 2018, production came back to America. Built in Minnesota with precision machining, polygonal rifling, and hand fitting, the new Desert Eagle is something else entirely. Suddenly it grouped like a rifle, cycled heavy Magnum loads with surprising reliability, and delivered accuracy that left shooters stunned. It is still enormous, still heavy, still expensive to feed, and still impractical for carry. But none of that matters, because its comeback is about proving a point. The Desert Eagle isn't just a movie prop. In its modern form, it is a serious firearm, a precision tool, and an icon reborn. All of these guns, from the Featherlight to the Desert Eagle, prove the same lesson. Legends don't die, they wait. They wait for the right mix of nostalgia and need, for a company brave enough to invest in quality, for shooters who remember what made them great in the first place. They remind us that craftsmanship and history matter just as much as innovation. They show that sometimes the best guns aren't the newest, but the ones that already earned their place and simply needed a second chance. So the question is, which of these comebacks surprised you the most? And which one would you bring home today? Let me know your pick in the comments. And make sure you subscribe to Bulletbound and turn on notifications so you never miss the next story.